Donald Trump's presidency was marked by a variety of tough-on-crime policies. From his vocal support for law enforcement to his controversial immigration crackdown, Trump made crime a central focus of his administration. In today's video, we're going to look at some of his most significant crime-fighting efforts and their impact. But first, let's take a quick look at some recent news that has brought Trump's crime-fighting legacy back into the spotlight. One of the most notable accomplishments during Trump's tenure was the signing of the First Step Act in 2018. Now, you might be thinking, Ben, why is this a big deal? This landmark legislation, passed with bipartisan support, marked a significant shift in how we approach criminal justice in America. For years, the focus was on punishment, often leading to overcrowded prisons and disproportionately affecting minority communities. The First Step Act aimed to change that. The law focused on reducing mandatory minimum sentences for certain non-violent offenses. These mandatory minimums, often criticized for being overly harsh, trapped many individuals in a cycle of incarceration without considering individual circumstances. The First Step Act recognized that rehabilitation and reintegration into society are crucial for reducing recidivism. The act also aimed to improve rehabilitation programs in federal prisons. Now, this wasn't about giving criminals a free pass, it was about recognizing that people can change and providing them with the tools and resources to become productive members of society upon release. Think about it. Wouldn't you rather have someone released from prison with job skills and a support system than without? The First Step Act, while just a first step, as the name suggests, represented a significant departure from the traditional tough-on-crime approach. It acknowledged the need for a more nuanced and compassionate criminal justice system while maintaining accountability. Throughout his presidency, Donald Trump was a staunch supporter of law enforcement, often echoing the sentiment that police officers put their lives on the line every day to protect our communities. He frequently praised their bravery and dedication, particularly in the face of what he described as rising crime rates and anti-police sentiment. Trump consistently emphasized the need for stronger police forces, both in terms of funding and resources. He argued that empowering law enforcement was essential to maintaining law and order, especially in the wake of highly publicized incidents of civil unrest and protests. He often drew a direct correlation between supporting the police and ensuring public safety. His administration took concrete steps to bolster law enforcement, advocating for increased police budgets, providing surplus military equipment to local police departments, and promoting policies that offered greater legal protections for officers. Trump argued that these measures were necessary to restore respect for law enforcement and combat what he perceived as a growing anti-police narrative. This unwavering support for law enforcement resonated with a segment of the population who viewed police officers as the frontline defenders of peace and order. However, it also drew criticism from those who argued that it overlooked concerns about police brutality and systemic racism within law enforcement. Chapter 3. Building Walls, Deporting Criminals, Trump's Immigration Crackdown. One of the most defining aspects of Donald Trump's presidency was his hardline stance on immigration, which he directly linked to his crime-fighting agenda. Trump argued that illegal immigration contributed to crime rates and posed a significant threat to national security. The centerpiece of Trump's immigration policy was his commitment to building a wall along the US-Mexico border. This wall, he argued, was necessary to deter illegal crossings, stem the flow of drugs, and prevent criminals from entering the country. Beyond the wall, Trump implemented a series of policies aimed at reducing illegal immigration. This included increasing the number of Border Patrol agents, expanding detention facilities for undocumented immigrants, and implementing a zero-tolerance policy that led to the separation of families at the border. Furthermore, Trump's administration significantly increased the number of deportations, focusing particularly on removing undocumented immigrants with criminal records. He argued that prioritizing the deportation of criminals was essential to protecting American citizens and upholding the rule of law. Chapter 4. Combating the Opioid Crisis, a Public Health Emergency. The opioid epidemic ravaged communities across the United States during Trump's presidency. Recognizing the severity of the crisis, Trump declared the opioid epidemic a public health emergency in 2017. This declaration, while largely symbolic, brought increased national attention to the issue and paved the way for additional funding and resources to combat the crisis. Trump's approach to the opioid crisis was multifaceted, focusing on reducing the supply of opioids, expanding access to treatment, and supporting law enforcement efforts to crack down on drug trafficking. He often framed the crisis as a law enforcement issue, emphasizing the role of illegal drugs, particularly fentanyl, in fueling addiction and overdose deaths. His administration implemented stricter regulations on opioid prescriptions, making it more difficult for individuals to obtain large quantities of these highly addictive painkillers. Additionally, Trump advocated for increased funding for drug courts and treatment programs, recognizing the need to address the underlying causes of addiction. While Trump's efforts to combat the opioid crisis were met with mixed reviews, his administration's focus on the issue undoubtedly contributed to raising awareness and prompting action at both the federal and state levels. Outro: a complex legacy on crime. Donald Trump's presidency left an undeniable mark on the criminal justice landscape in America. His tough-on-crime rhetoric, coupled with his administration's policies, ignited fierce debates and left a complex legacy. While Trump's crime policies were controversial and sparked debates, his focus on reforming criminal justice, supporting law enforcement, and tackling major crime issues made a lasting impact during his presidency. His supporters lauded his commitment to law and order, arguing that his policies made communities safer. However, critics argued that his approach disproportionately targeted minority communities, exacerbated mass incarceration, and eroded trust in law enforcement. Ultimately, Trump's legacy on crime will continue to be debated and analyzed.